The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
The North Kesteven series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Welcome back to North Kesteven, everybody. That sun is getting up and it is starting to get warm, but in Folkingham yesterday, the only part of my body that was really very cold was my hands, so I have reverted to putting my gloves on. It's not quite that warm yet, but hopefully by the end of this episode, these will be ditched again and we can move on. Anyway, my sort of extremities aside, where are we? Well, we're in a place which actually references another one over the border into South Kesteven. If you can see sort of in this direction, you won't be able to see anything apart from a field, but over there, there's a place called Folkingham. And this village that we're covering today is called Walcot near Folkingham, in order to sort of distinguish it from the other Walcot in North Kesteven. So, we better get cracking, hadn't we? The funny thing is that Walcot near Folkingham is actually more associated with another village than it is with Folkingham, and that would be Pickworth. And we're beginning today's episode outside this building here, and this has a link to Pickworth. We'll discover what it is in a moment. This is Walcot near Folkingham. Walcot near Folkingham, Britain's cottages near the village of Folker's people. North Kesteven has two villages by the name of Walcot. We've already covered one of them. That was the one near Billingham, where we learned about things like the Plough Inn, a nice village by all accounts. This is the other one, and even though it's pronounced the same way, it's spelt slightly differently, having only the one T as opposed to the other having two instead. Even though there is that slight difference, the parish name still identifies it as being near Folkingham, despite the fact it's not really required. Folkingham is over the border into South Kesteven, so we'll come to that one a different time. Walcot is a pretty tranquil village 7 miles away from Sleaford and just the 1 mile from Folkingham. Like the one near Billingham, it has the same meaning, coming from the Old English words wall and cot, meaning cottages of the Britons. The chances are it's a former Roman settlement, but the first official record of its existence came in the Domesday Book, which told us it had just 6 villages. In 1816, Marrett, in his History of Lincolnshire, notes 2 Elizabethan manor houses here, one to the west of the church, which belonged to Sir Gilbert Heathcote, and the other to the southeast of the church, belonging to Edward Brown. Both Heathcote and Brown were lords of the manor and principal landowners. Close to the village was a Chalobit spring, noted for its medicinal virtues, but it lost its reputation many years ago. Let's see what it has a reputation for today. This is nowhere near as big as Walcot near Billingham, but it's still a lovely Lincolnshire village. We start with the old school, which is a long way out of the village to the southwest. It's not unusual to find a school this far away from a main village, we know that by now, but usually there's a reason for it. In this case, it's because it wasn't just built for the children of Walcot. A lot of small villages like Walcot found it difficult to sustain their own schools when the Education Act was passed in 1870. The solution was to form joint school boards to serve 2 villages or more. Walcot did so, but not with Folkingham. Instead, it went with Pickworth, another South Kesteven village over the border to the southwest. The school was purposely sited between the two so that children from neither had to travel an excessive distance. That said, it is still a little bit closer to Walcot than it is to Pickworth. This school opened in 1878. In its first year, it had just 18 pupils. Measuring 40 feet by 20, the one and only classroom was heated by a solid fuel stove, which for much of its life was inefficient, needed a fireguard, and smoked very badly. There was no electricity until 1956, and all the lighting was by gas. Throughout its 93-year history, a total of 18 permanent head teachers served, with an average of 5 years of service each. Pupils came from the rural farming environment that surrounds both villages, and upon its closure in 1971 they all transferred to Folkingham School. A year later, the school and schoolmaster's house were sold together for £7,500. To get into Walcot village from the school, you have to drive along this long, narrow lane. It's not straight. In fact, where it bends just before the village, there's a pretty noticeable water feature. It's a ford where the lane runs across stream, flowing eastwards towards Folkingham. While we're on the subject of water features, there's another one you can see in the fields to the southeast of the main village. That would be Walcot's Chalabot Spring, which was the main source of drinking water and washing water for the community until the late 1930s. The spring was fed by the Lincolnshire limestone aquifer and also supplied water to the stock on the fens. It hardly ever dried up and never froze. It was known for its intermittent flow of bubbles rising to the surface, and in cold weather steam would rise as the water was naturally warm. People used it for medicinal virtues, but it lost its reputation many years ago. Okay, so here we are then in Walcot village, and this won't take me very long to walk around. This is a very small place, and really it's only got one major landmark, and that would be the church, which you can't miss. You've probably seen it a couple of times already when I've been driving in and out of the place. It's got a huge tall spire, which we will talk about when we find ourselves outside that building, which won't be very long actually, because we're beginning here at Manor Farm, right on the sort of eastern boundary, if you like, of Walcot village, and we'll take a walk along this, the main street, which is called Village Street, towards that church and its fantastic spire. Walcot has no pub these days, but it used to. This here was the Black Horse, and it was right next to the church on the road towards Folkingham. It was pretty much the only village amenity, and both it and the church are sited away from the middle of Walcot, which is marked by a huge green. Walcot's Grade 1 listed Anglican church is dedicated to St Nicholas. It dates from the 12th century, although it has additions and adaptations up to and including the 18th. It was restored in 1899, 1907 and 1926. The architectural style is mainly decorated, and the interior is of an early English date. It consists of a perpendicular clerestory, a nave, aisles and a tower with a crocketed brooch spire containing 4 bells. Of this church, Nicholas Pevsner noted a 17th century south entrance panelled door incorporating a wicket gate and the existence of an 1809 pattern by William Fountain. Meanwhile, Marrett describes 2 monumental brasses to Isaac Lavington and John Lavington in the floor of the north aisle. Within the churchyard is a Grade 1 listed shaft of a 14th century cross with a later added sundial. Classic rural village green, this. I imagine at one time it was one thing before these roads existed, or there were maybe footpaths across it, but of course now there's a couple of roads that make their way over the green. It was probably all one thing centuries ago. And most of the houses here in Walcot are around that green. We've seen a couple of them already. There's a few more here. There's one there, for example. There's another one over there, and then if you sort of pan around, there's a few more down there. And effectively everything I'm showing you here is the entire village, apart from the school obviously, which is a long way away, because Walcot is basically just this small. It really is. Let's head across to this sign because I want to show you something. You'll see here Folkingham, 1 mile away. There we go, 1 mile away. Pickworth's 1 1/4, so technically speaking Folkingham is actually closer to Walcot, but it's Pickworth for some reason that the school decided to align itself with. And then Threakingham is 2 miles that way. Up above you can see there's a roundel, and you can see at the top it says KCC Walcot. KCC refers to the old Kesteven County Council. So this is the green, and it's crisscrossed by several small roads. Virtually all of the village is sited around this collection of triangular pieces of land. There used to be a smithy in the southwestern corner of the green. That, however, no longer stands. Lots of things still do, such as the Manor House, towering over it to the north. We'll check that out shortly. Listed buildings in Walcot include the Grange and Laurel Farm, both late 17th century and on Main Street, as well as a barn at Manor Farm. West of the green is a pond, and this is related to the Manor House. It's all that remains of a medieval fish pond complex which would have once provided fish, wildfowl and a water supply to the house. Still water filled, this measures 55 metres in length and is roughly rectangular in shape at the northern end, measuring 25 metres across. The southern portion of the pond broadens out to become roughly semicircular in plan, measuring up to 50 metres across. It also includes a narrow, rectangular island. The northern end of the pond is still supplied with water via a channel which turns sharply to the west and narrows before broadening out again. This narrowing and angle of the supply channel where it feeds into the pond suggests an arrangement of dams or sluices may have been in place at one time here. Whilst the Manor House no longer relies on the pond for what it used to, it's become quite a pretty feature of Walcot Village now. Walcot once had more than one manor house. There were two, in fact, belonging to Sir Gilbert Heathcote and Edward Brown, respectively. Walcot Village belonged to the Manor of Folkingham, which was granted to Gilbert de Gant following the Norman conquest, and was held by his descendants until the late 13th century. It was then variously held by the Crown or the de Beaumont family. It later passed to Sir Gilbert Heathcote, and in the mid-19th century he owned the Manor House at Walcot and the surrounding land, including the Fishpond. You have heard his name before. That's the same Gilbert Heathcote that we met in the Rutland series when we visited Empingham. He owned a lot more than just that Normanton estate. The other manor house, owned by Edward Brown, was located to the southeast of the church. Between them, Heathcote and Brown owned all of the land in Walcot at one time. So there's no parish notice board here, or at least not one I can find, but I suppose the church notice board will have to do for the purposes of putting a card on to mark that I've been to Walcot. So we'll do that now. There we go. That, my friends, is Walcot near Folkingham. Yeah, that's really all there is to Walcot. It's not got a lot really, but then again, sometimes less is more. It's nothing like its bigger brother near Billinghay, but still, Walcot near Folkingham is one of the prettiest villages in North Kesteven, and it was a pleasure to visit. There's more tomorrow, so feel free to come back and see what's up next. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.